3 p.m. in Nairobi. It is 2 p.m. in Johannesburg, South Africa. This is Midday, live in Accra. My name is Bright. Let me welcome our viewers in Europe and the Americas. Thanks so much for staying there with us. Now, this afternoon, we're looking at issues on the labor front. The National Labor Commission is dragging some labor unions to court. One of them is the Government and Hospital Pharmacists Association. We'll be finding out exactly what has been happening on the front of this particular labor union and why the Labor Commission is dragging them to court. And also coming up tonight, a former Supreme Court judge and senior fellow of the Institute of Economic Affairs, Professor Justice Klute, is asking Ghanaians to condition themselves for the outcome of the election petition hearing. We'll be finding out more from that particular issue here on Midday Live. On the international front, UN officials are saying that China has offered soldiers the new UN peacekeeping in Mali, and we'll be getting more from that particular issue there on Midday Live. And you can stay interactive on Facebook, on Twitter, as well as our short code 1734. Stay right there. I'm coming back with all the details. Right, thanks so much for staying there. Now, Saturday will mark 50 years since the Organization of African Unity was formed, now African Union. And of course, heads of state and government are in Addis Ababa, the Ethiopian capital, to deliberate on moving the continent forward. Last night on News at 10, we saw the views of a governance expert on exactly what is it about African unity, especially with economic emancipation. Let's take a watch. Is the idea of African unity not a mirage? Is it something that can be achieved?
It can. In 1960, at the Addis conference, or 1961, at the Addis conference, the Nigerian representative said that, look, if you want to achieve African unity, it must be bottom up, not top down. But ever since the idea of African unity started, the people, the ordinary people, in Ghana we say the ordinary people, but the civil society and ordinary people in Africa have been left out. But I'll tell you something. If you look at the economic activity that is going on along the borders by ordinary people, those who cross to Togo and change their money on what we call the black market, those who trade from Ghana to Nigeria, these are the people who can make African unity happen.
So it can happen? It
can happen, but with the people.
You seem to talk about from the bottom, not the top.
No.
Now, you find African states virtually divided, the various countries. You find divisions resulting from conflicts and others. If within the countries there are divisions, how do you see the entire entity getting united?
That's why I say that when you go down, if you go to East Africa, for example, the people of East Africa travel along their countries with virtually an ID card. You understand? If you go to South Africa and you are crossing into Lesotho, all those countries,
just an ID card.
An ID card can take you there. And then the people trade. Now, when you go to Nigeria, they talk about Mama Bomboy. And then when you come to Ghana, they talk about Kofi Mama. So the culture on the ground is the same. If you cross to Togo, the people who are going to trade with you don't talk about whether you are Ghanaian or you are Nigerian. Trade is happening. When you go to the markets, there's little or no tribalism. You see tribalism and discrimination at the top, where elites like you and I use strive for the political advantage. On the people, if you go to take the car from Accra to Togo, take the car from Accra to Kufurudia, and the villages, you see ordinary people from different tribes across Ghana, Evers, trading, farming, intermarrying, drinking, and dancing among themselves. There's nothing.
So the problem is the top.
It's the top. It's the political agenda.
Are leaders benefiting from keeping this continent, let me use this word, disunited?
Exactly. Because they are busy collecting rent from the mineral resources. They are busy selling concessions to Chinese and collecting rents. They are busy doing business among themselves. So you see, the people themselves on the ground, the majority, vast majority of civil society is left out. Now I want to talk about AU. The ordinary people don't understand AU. They are not taken along with the politicians. And then, so you see that all the political conflicts in Africa, go to Somalia, go to the Boko Haram situation, they are all in every country. Look at our own country with the political situation here. It's about the same thing. It's about rent seeking. It's about rent collecting. When I talk about rent collecting, it's about politicians taking money from the rents for the mineral resources and from the business that they do. The loans they collect and share among themselves. You understand?
So they prefer to keep their separate countries to continue collecting the rent.
Exactly. So they collect the rents. And so what will happen? Nothing is going to happen.
Right. Kuja Fari, a governance expert there, talking about the African Union. Now, the Institute of Democratic Governance is talking about 50 years of African unity, and in collaboration with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, they are organizing a series of fora on development in Ghana and Africa. The round table is on the theme Ghana's democratization process so far, the African Charter, democracy, elections, and governance. Colleague Edward Kwabe is right there. And Eddie, great to have you here on Midday Live. Now, exactly what is being discussed at this particular forum?
We all know that today is a great day for Africans, and today marks 50 years of the existence of the OAU, which is now the African Union, the AU. Now, stakeholders, when it comes to democracy and Pan-Africanism, when Africans should all come together and celebrate this day, they have come together at IDEC, and they are putting their heads together as to how to go about the issues when it comes to Pan-Africanism and coming together, becoming one as a continent. This is an idea that was touted about 50 years ago by our search for Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, amongst several African leaders who, in their own knowledge, felt it was right at the time that Africans come together and fight a common cause. Now, issues that have been raised here are very crucial, and the main issue has been the fact that Africans cannot unite if we continue to sign charters that are not of national character in nature. You know, most of the treaties that are being signed on the continent are signed, but then they are not being adhered to by the various countries when it comes to implementing them. Some of these treaties include treaties on trade. The fact that we sign a lot of treaties and laws that when we come down, there should be free movement of goods and services across the neighboring countries. But this is not happening on the ground. So stakeholders are really worried that this may hinder or may serve as a threat for us to come together as one nation. To be more specific, I will touch on what Dr. Vladimir Danso of Lesia Legon said about African unity. He is worried that for years, African nations have not been able to have good leadership or good governance alongside its democracy. And he is worried, even though we've chalked a lot of successes when it comes to democracy, we are lacking good governance. And without good governance, it will lead to our democracy will be meaningless. And eventually, it may affect our structures when it comes to the democracy we are enjoying.
Right.
And it will be affecting the institutions.
Right. Now, Edward, before I let you go, and the worry is about the impediments in perhaps the drive at achieving a total unity of the African continent. Now, these people who are participants of this forum, where are they placing the blame? Is it on leadership or perhaps the entire citizenry of the continent?
They've gone straight away to confirm that Africa lacks good leadership or good governance, and that is affecting our structures. You know, they are saying that current leaders of Africa lack the commitment when they sign treaties, overall treaties that are supposed to bind the continent as one. When we come down, that is on the national phase, it is not being able to be implemented. Such laws are supposed to be adopted and implemented by all, and eventually it will bring us together as one continent. So Pan-Africanism cannot be achieved when treaties are signed and they are ignored on the national phase.
Thanks so much. Edward Kirby is my man there at the roundtable discussion of the Institute of Democratic Governance there. And TV3 will run from today a week-long series on African unity, Africa Reborn. That's how we christened it. And we'll be getting you a series of issues, raising them, the African peer review mechanism, and all that coming from the fallout of the 50 years of the Organization of African Unity, now African Union.